The impacts of the coronavirus pandemic have been severely felt throughout almost every industry. The high street has taken a huge hit, with the impact of people being told to stay indoors still being felt in Chelmsford, as the Essex-based town finds itself under Tier 2 restrictions for the second time since the tier structure was first imposed. Originally placed under Tier 2 status in mid-October, Chelmsford has since endured another nationwide lockdown, before again returning to Tier 2 restrictions, a decision that has been questioned by many who live there. One feature of the rules of an area must abide by is that though hospitality sectors aren't entirely closed, you can only visit them with members of your own household. This in turn leads to a huge drop in the amount of customers likely to visit restaurants, bars and nightlife venues. Compared to the astronomical number of people who flock to restaurants, pubs and bars in the summer, many businesses aided by the government's Eat Out to Help Out scheme, that figure has dropped drastically in Tier 2 status regions. One venue that has been badly hurt by the restrictions is the Channels estate, which boasts a restaurant, bar and clubhouse as well as a golf course. I spoke to a member of staff there to ask how the venue have dealt with their ever-changing restrictions.
So, being based in Chelmsford, Little Channels was subject to Tier 2 restrictions that Essex County Council actually asked for in October. How did that decision affect the venue?
They cut a lot of staff off, so the staff base and employees shrunk massively. And a lot of things happened as well, like inside the venue. So weddings where we could usually fit like 80 to 100 people were cut down to about 15 people now. It also meant that we had like a one-track system round the venue. There was a lot of points where you had to sanitize, and we were wearing masks and gloves and things. And I think just like the general air in the building as well, I think it made because a lot of golf members that would play would then come into the clubhouse as well for like coffees and things. I think even when they were sat outside, they were a lot more uncomfortable than they previously would have been.
When Essex went into Tier 2, I think in like mid-October, it obviously must have done sufficient damage to the custom. How did did staff feel like the restrictions were unjustified, like they were kind of being unnecessarily, like the hospitality sector was being a bit targeted?
I wouldn't say that particular feeling was so apparent. I think it was just more, it was such a nuisance. It just meant that there was 2 or 3 steps that had to be done before anything could be done. Serving drinks and food and things, everything had that added layer of hands. You had to explain stuff to people. No, you can't sit together because you're different households, and not even all of the customers could understand or had heard all of the restrictions, which meant that we had to explain all those, and they were hearing it for the first time. So that was a little bit grinding as well, because people might drive quite a way to come to the golf club, and then you have to explain they can't sit together. They aren't best pleased by that.
From early June until that time in mid-October, hospitality venues were kind of allowed to run relatively as normal as long as they operated and adhered to COVID safety rules. How challenging was it before the restrictions of Tier 2 came in place, when you had things like Eat Out to Help Out and just a lot of people flooding in? How difficult was it to maintain that atmosphere of normality whilst also having strict rules in place?
I think it was a lot easier then than it is now. I think that in that time, I think the weather was a lot better. People were welcoming sitting outside and seeing friends, because we just had that huge lockdown as well for quite a while. And like I say, the weather was much better. People were happy to sit outside. So there wasn't so much need to sit inside. So again, I think people were willing or be willing to subject to those restrictions because it had been so bad during the formal lockdown prior.
Finally, do you think the regulations that are currently in place with the tier system, do you think they kind of take the hospitality sector into consideration when you see things like the rate of transmission is higher in schools and things like that than it is in venues?
I think it's like a bit of a needs must thing, isn't it? I think that education, schooling has to kind of come as a priority. But like you say, it's a really difficult balancing act for the government, in that you've got businesses that are essentially dying, there's no income, and they do need to have some form of income. But then again, you open up all of these businesses and there's a good chance that infection rates are going to rise as well. So I think they have been considered. It is just a really tough period for hospitality. So yeah, it's hard to say. I think they have been considered, but in that it's kind of the impossible job with hospitality, just because of the nature of the businesses.
As the town centre remains a ghost town under the rules, the general public have hardly taken to the new restrictions kindly, with some voicing their discontent.
Yeah, in this world, this is a town that used to have, well, we're so used to having such more of a vibrant atmosphere, and now with everything closed, it's just a ghost town. Everywhere's lifeless, everyone's wearing masks, everyone's distant from each other. It just makes you question whether it was all worth it.